Close to 50 years ago, I first arrived in Israel on the night of the ceasefire of the Yom Kippur War. I went to kibbutz in the north, kibbutz Sde Nehemiah, and I was greeted by an Israeli who took it upon himself to give me a lesson in Jewish identity, Jewish Israeli identity. And he sat us down, myself and a group of British volunteers, and he wanted to share with us his view. He said the following: "I'm Israeli. Being Jewish means nothing to me." We were a little bit confused by that split, but I'd like to speak to you about how that's manifest in the current situation. And for me, it became a bit of a lifelong search to see how these two identities, which certainly can be seen as two conflicting identities, actually can be healed and synthesized for the next generation of the State of Israel. Today, we are in the grips of a massive conflict, internal conflict. The State of Israel has reached a point where we are actually looking at our future from very different perspectives. And this has resulted in a massive emergence of hostility from one side to the other, and conflicts that are actually penetrating even into families that don't speak to each other. This has emerged around a critique of the proposed reforms for the judicial system here in Israel, and people have taken to the streets by the hundreds of thousands in opposition to these reforms. People in favor of the reforms have also gone to the streets in hundreds of thousands, but the energy against the current government and the statements of polarization that have emerged between these two sides has created a feeling of a house divided against itself, that we are in fact not one people unified, but two peoples. Two sides of this debate have threatened the very core of our sense of unity and solidarity and being one family that has been at the forefront, has been at the root of our sense of who we are as a people. As Jewish people, we're one family. Certainly when we face a common enemy, we feel that, but now that we're not in the midst of some specific conflict, we're stuck with this sense of who are we? These two identities seem to be completely at odds with each other. On the one hand, an Israeli identity, and this conflict goes back at least 100 years, 120 years, that the new Israel, the new Zionist vision for Israel would be a break from the exile identity of Jews. It would be a new Jew that would emerge, that would be more secular, more liberal, more universal. And there were those that during this whole period saw the Jewish identity as primary, the Jewish identity that was rooted in our past and that we brought back because of being Jewish, and that the Jewish state would have a more conservative, more religious, more Jewish identity. So this Israeli identity and Jewish identity that have come to the forefront at this moment in time have a conflicting or competing vision for the future of the State of Israel. Whatever the final solution will be, whatever the resolution of the conflict around the proposed judicial reform will be, and I hope it will be with a form of consensus that will emerge. But I think everyone realizes at this point that it's not primarily about that. It's about these competing identities, competing visions for the State of Israel. And therefore, the question becomes, is there something that can actually heal this wound, that can, let's say, even synthesize these two dimensions of Israeli identity and our vision for our future, that aren't compromising each one, but actually bring them together in a way that synthesize and unify our efforts to create the kind of state that we all want on both sides of this debate? I believe that there is. The actual answer to this came to me also from a kibbutznik 16 years ago on a street corner in Tel Aviv. And this woman, Sharon Portugali, said to me, "You're looking for something that can unify these two dimensions of Jewish identity, something that can be a force for positive change that will bring out the idealism from both sides of the debate." It's there. It's right in front of us. It's called the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are both Jewish and universal. They're both protect the individual freedoms and give us a national responsibility. They're relevant and eternal. These are elements that we don't find easily, but they actually have been at the root of our national mission that we started our long history of Jewish identity from. Because our mission is not just to build a Jewish state, but to create a state that is actually carries with it a universal vision for humanity. And therefore the notions of both Israeli and Jewish identity that have been carried by the diverse elements of the Jewish people can be a source of unifying force for us. Because we need to build a state that is both Jewish and universal, that carries with it our past and our present and our future, that is actually a new start, but it's a new start that incorporates who we are from our past. The Ten Commandments, the Aseret Dibrot, can unify the Jewish people around the shared values that are contained in the Aseret Dibrot. We've demonstrated this over the last 16 years, in particular the last year and a half, in doing the workshops that we do, discussion circles that we bring together right and left, religious and secular Jews, to discover how much we share these values contained in the Ten Commandments. Interestingly, across the country in the last several months, there have emerged multiple groups that are establishing themselves as vehicles of bridging the communication between these two sides of the debate, reducing the hostility, changing the antagonistic communication to one of understanding and connection. Multiple organizations have sprung up. We are now partnering with these organizations. The Aseret movement is offering to build upon this new dimension of communication that involves respect and understanding and reestablishing that family connection, but to take it to the next stage. The next stage being, yes, there are competing visions, and it's not enough to only respect both sides because we're living together and we have one common destiny. And in that, we can actually build upon what we've always stood for, which was the values that are both universal and Jewish, that are values that are both accepting of the differences and unifying where we have common ground, and that we have a mission as a Jewish people and an Israeli people to build a nation here that incorporates both sides of these debate and actually creates a synthesis for this next stage of Israeli identity, Jewish Israeli identity, that is not separate but actually together, and that incorporates both a religious and a so-called secular vision for the state, because we have to have something that both speaks to ourselves and speaks to the whole world. In that regard, we've participated in a workshop that President Herzog invited us to, that his staff invited us to discuss something called Time to Talk, where we've been trained in this methodology of listening more deeply to the other. And of course, that's the prerequisite for building a synthesis, a vision that incorporates both sides of this debate. We're looking forward to bringing these discussion circles across the country, to every place, to families, to businesses, to campuses, of course, where we're already bringing it to, and to expand it to every campus in the country, and to bring it to actually be a vehicle for healing wounds, building synthesis, and committing to a common vision that we can have for the state of Israel that brings together the diversity that we share. We share values contained in the Aseret Dibrot. Join us. I'm inviting you to participate in this next phase of the state of Israel's destiny. Join us to build a unified vision based on the shared values contained in the Ten Commandments for the future of the state of Israel. Look forward to being in touch. Blessings from Jerusalem.